Hi everyone, I have a couple of fun birthday cards featuring Studio Katia's Mini Slimline Small Hearts cover die. They feature transparent card fronts and the hearts are inlaid. And I have a great tip so that when you open up the card, there isn't messy glue showing on the back of the cardstock hearts. I wouldn't exactly call these quick and easy cards, but they're certainly easy. And did I mention fun? They're super fun to make. For the rainbow card front, I used vellum. For this card that I'm showing you, I'm going to be working with acetate. To begin, I've cut pink cardstock, which will be the frame, and 2 pieces of acetate to 3.5 by 8.5 inches. I'm not yet going to crease my card base, which measures 7 inches wide by 8.5 inches tall. The die cut needs to line up perfectly between the card base and the frame. The pink panel is lined up on the left-hand side of the card base. The scallop die from Mini Slimline Set 1 is centered onto the pink panel and then held in place with low-tack tape. To avoid marks on the card base, I first lay down copy paper onto the cutting plate. I got lucky and the die cut through both layers of cardstock at the same time. If it had not, I would have had an impression on the card base and would have simply lined up my die again and cut it. Now I'll go ahead and score my card base at 3.5 inches. Because of the large die cut opening, I take some care as I crease along the score line. I don't want to burnish with the end of my bone folder in case I catch something and rip it, so I'm going to use the side. Everything is lining up and looking good, so now I can go ahead and adhere one of the panels of acetate to the front of the card base. Liquid adhesive on acetate can take longer to dry. I'm just going to set it under my MISTI and leave it for a bit while I work on my second panel. The small hearts cover die is centered on the panel and then run through the die cutter. Even though it was run back and forth in the die cutter a couple of times, I still had to use my craft pick to release most of the hearts. This acetate panel will be adhered on top of the other one. I place liquid adhesive around the perimeter of the front of the card base, lay the panel down, and again set it aside to dry completely. Now to prepare the cardstock, I'll be working with 3 shades of pink. There are 15 rows of hearts, so I cut my cardstock down so that I can cut 5 rows on each color. So here's the tip to avoid having the adhesive show on the back of the hearts when the card is opened up. I'm running my cardstock through the Xyron sticker maker. Not that you need to invest in this little machine. What you need is sheet adhesive. Clear, consistent, thin. That's the trick. There are a couple of brands that I'm familiar with, Stick It and one made by Simon Says Stamp. After the adhesive-backed cardstock has been die cut, each heart will have backing paper. And before I start doing the inlay work, I'm first going to adhere the pink frame, making sure that it's oriented correctly so the scallops line up to the card base. The 3 tones of pink hearts will be inlaid diagonally. I begin with my lightest pink, then my mid-tone, and then finally my darkest. So really the most time-consuming piece of this entire project is actually removing the backing paper. It pops off easily, but you definitely need a craft pick. Between these 2 cards, I've inlaid a lot of little hearts, and I found the best way of doing this is by pushing the top of the heart into the die cut opening first and then lowering it down. And although the inlaid work does take time, it's actually really relaxing. You're not working with adhesive, so there's no fussing and mussing. You're just popping those hearts in, and it's really quite fun to start seeing the pattern emerge. So the first card that was done with vellum is certainly not as dramatic as this one. I didn't want to cover up any of those cute hearts, so I decided to put the sentiment on the inside of the card. I'm using a cute stamp set called It's Your Birthday. The main sentiment, the scripty happy birthday, is going to be inked up with a combination of picked raspberry and worn lipstick Distress Oxide inks. I started off with my lighter tone, then my dark tone, and then back to my light tone to overlap it to cause it to blend. For the rainbow card, I'll be working with Cube Inks by Altenew, Cotton Candy, Mango Smoothie, Caribbean Sky, and Deep Iris. Because I was working with 4 colors, I applied each color and stamped it before I moved on to the next. I made sure that as I applied each one that I overlapped it slightly onto the color above it. In this way I ended up getting my secondary colors, and so with 4 inks I end up with just about a full rainbow. This stamp set comes with several secondary sentiments. Chose a different one for each card and stamped it with black VersaFine ink. And that completes these 2 fun birthday cards featuring Mini Slimline Small Hearts cover die. This was a really enjoyable project, hence I have 2 cards rather than 1. I really like the idea of having a transparent card front and then inlaying the hearts so that they look just as good on the front of the card as they do when you open it up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit.